Hi, I'm Susan Moore, the Community Engagement Manager for the International Institute of Business Analysis, and it is time for another Business Analysis Live. Welcome. Thanks for taking some time out to join us today. We are going to be talking about getting real world ready with the ECBA. Maybe you've heard we've got some changes coming up. And we thought what might be interesting to you is not necessarily the logistics and the how to, but we thought you guys would be interested in a behind the scenes understanding of why things changed. And for that, there is only one person who can give us that, and it's the product manager who worked on those changes. And so I want to welcome my colleague, Tyler Kenny. Hey, Tyler.
Hey, Susan. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction.
Yay.
I'm internally weighing what I can and cannot say right now. So hopefully everything that slips out is A-okay.
Well, it's a behind the scenes exploration of what
Yeah,
happened and why. So, we don't have to talk about names, but maybe you'll be able to share some facts with us
yeah, sure.
about some of the things that have changed. Maybe just one logistics question to get us started, just so people are clear,
Yeah.
because we throw that term around ECBA.
Mhm.
Maybe you want to talk a little bit about what the ECBA stands for, and maybe talk about it's a certificate versus a certification. So maybe explain that.
Sure. Yeah. So the Entry Certificate in Business Analysis, or ECBA, as it's lovingly referred to, is a certificate versus a certification. And the main distinction is certificates are kind of like a snapshot in time where you get the certificate and you have access to it based on just ad nauseum. Like you keep it forever. There's no professional development units that you need to keep up with. There's no recurring buy-in cycle or whatever. It's mostly you get the certificate, you get the acronym at the end of your name, and then email signature. Certifications, and we've got tons of them. Those are the recurring ones where you'll invest in professional development units or credibility development units, whatever the acronym is that floats around. And you keep them in good standing, and those are constantly involved. It's one of the bigger reasons why we kind of invested in evolving the ECBA is because it is representative of this snapshot in time. And as we all know, times are changing. So
I feel like reality is coming at us quickly these days.
there it is.
So, all right. Well, that I think helps to set up what it is and even segues a little bit into the why we decided to change it, because the ECBA has been around for a few years. In fact, I think it is one of the newer exams that we have, and we've already started to change it. So, what are some of the factors that influenced us to make some of these changes?
Yes. Some of the two big ones, I guess, everybody and their mother could guess at this point. AI, like obviously it's not something we can ignore at this point. And another was kind of this one's a little like more nebulous, but the expectation versus capability gap is kind of what we're referring to it as. So people are being asked a lot more to do a lot more with less. This is aided by the aforementioned AI. The capabilities of teams, you can scale it beyond what was possibly thought like even 5 years ago. But there's a big expectation of more from people to be able to deliver more with less. So those are the two big factors, and we really dove into kind of both of them in terms of the driving factors for why we updated the ECBA. Now, I'll say right now, like the exam is not entirely on AI, but it did play a role in kind of how we developed it and the decisions we made in terms of that.
Mm. I know previously the exam has been more knowledge based, but with these changes, it is part knowledge, part applied.
Mhm.
So maybe talk about what we mean by that.
Yeah. So I guess the application component kind of, we can get to that as we dive into the rationale for the change, because I definitely want to talk more about like the, I guess, impact of it. So
Mm-hmm.
the first thing I guess obviously we should talk about is the giant algorithmic elephant in the room, which, AI isn't coming for what was once seen as foundational types of work. It kind of already has. Now, I have to preface, as I always do whenever I talk about AI, that I am not an expert on artificial intelligence. And with the rate of change in that field, anyone who claims to be is either naive, arrogant, or more often than not, probably trying to sell you something. But in talking to people much smarter than ourselves, we found that the kind of tasks that once helped professionals build foundational level capability, things like synthesizing meeting notes and organizing and rolling up data to support your work, and even working through things like requirement specs, they're being handled at scale much more efficiently by generative tools with subject matter expert oversight for refinement, more so than kind of assigning them to individuals at this point. And I know that's a bit of a heavy statement, and I'm not saying it to scare or dissuade anyone, but at this point, I'm not doing my job if I'm just sweeping that assessment under the rug. So what we did is we looked at it logically. This creates both a challenge and an opportunity. And the challenge is, how do professionals in the foundational stages of their journey in the industry build experience when they're not getting access to those learning moments anymore? And the opportunity here is that instead of owning and performing that work directly, we need to build capability to be able to oversee it and refine it. We're looking at this type of work kind of through like a different lens. It's no longer just a tactical one, it's also kind of a strategic one. And stuff like that, that's kind of why it breaks my heart a bit when I hear things, like strategic work isn't for early career professionals. It's for seniors and executives smoking cigars and sitting at a big oak table that costs more than my apartment. But the expectation should have always been, but now definitely is, no matter what level you are at an organization, you own the strategy at that level, at your sphere of influence, whatever you want to call it. You own the direction and decisions of your responsibilities. And where the ECBA fits in is it helps make sure that you're never starting from zero. You're already speaking the language, you're already thinking in terms of outcomes and value, and it gives you the confidence and practical application to not only enable, but to drive the work around you.
So this is interesting, and I'm gonna paraphrase what you said in part there, which is the changes for this are focusing on the task that will need a skilled human, because that's in the age of AI, human in the loop, HITL, which is a thing, is going to be essential. So if you're just knowing how to define things, but don't actually know what are the tasks involved and know where to build skills, you actually could be automated out of a job.
Yeah.
And so that is the defining force behind the changes. Also, I know that some of what we've heard, like the good part about ECBA is that previously it has been something that new career professionals or people transitioning could use to get themselves acquainted with the language. But there was that gap, either from the employers or from themselves, with, okay, well, I know the words, but I don't have that experience. And so you've also said, which I think is really important, you're not starting from zero, which I think is, in this age, the expectation is that you can hit the ground running. I have often thought that the reason that someone might go out and pursue a certificate or a certification is confidence, making sure that you know what you know. And so I like that you have taken that into account as well. So tell us a little bit more about the level of difficulty here that we're talking about, because the knowledge piece might be one thing, but when we start to talk about applied, if I'm new, how am I getting these skills? And now I'm going to be tested on this. So what's the approach there? And
Sure.
yeah.
So it's a great question, and it's definitely not the first time I've heard it. It's something I hear all the time, which is the exam going to be harder now? And I'll give you two answers. My professional product manager answer is we didn't make the ECBA harder. We made it more accurate. The exam now better reflects what foundational business analysis work actually looks like. And people at work aren't necessarily going to put you on the spot and say, quick, without looking at the Babak guide, what is task 6.1? Unless you're me, because jazz keeps me on my toes. But honestly, we want it to reflect real work, because when someone sees ECBA in that email signature, they should know that it signals capability and not just theoretical knowledge. But I also have my personal answer as a member of the business analysis community and cert taker myself. If you're really good at memorizing, then it may be a transition period for you. But if you're someone who internalizes information to understand not only the what that you're learning, but understanding the why behind it, you'll find the exam honestly a lot more intuitive. And more importantly, most importantly, you'll find yourself more prepared for the work that you perform after you hit submit on that final question.
Um, and by the way, this is not just Tyler coming up with the level of difficulty and where to test. Like, there was a whole process that you guys went through, and that that you and some other folks on our product team led. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about where did we get this information about how we should change
Yeah, absolutely.
this exam.
So obviously I can't give away like the secret sauce, but I can give kind of like a high level for all the stuff that we kind of considered in doing it. And it's not necessarily a neat step-by-step waterfall approach. I'll kind of just outline, I guess, the checklist of the things that we made sure that we weren't just, making our own thing, hoping that it's reflective of what's out there. So step one, as with everything, is we start by living it. So ultimately, we don't just sit in meetings all day or outsource our thinking to Gen AI. That's only like half my job, maybe, but I'm kidding. We get close to the work every day. Like, we do first-person research. I'm a product manager by title, but like, you best believe a massive part of that skill set entails performing effective analysis. Like, we're always documenting our own experiences of what works, where there's friction, and how we can scale our capability. But like you said, it's not just what Tyler thinks business analysis is. So we always bring in third-party data and benchmarks to make sure that what we're building isn't just based on the opinions of a madman, or even necessarily what IBA thinks. Like, we've got some ideas, and we stress test those ideas, of course, but they're always backed by real external validation and feedback through our community. So that's kind of another area where we review all kinds of feedback. Like, it comes in through either emails, interviews, workshops, surveys, practice analyses. Like, if you've got an opinion, like, we're open to it, and usually have some form of refinement process for getting it into the process, whether it's to help shape the direction or maybe like verify things that may or may not be aligned with what we're trying to do for the ECBA. All the data points just help to create more stability in the decisions that we're making. One of the big things that we did, and this was early on in the process, was, I've kind of outlined it a couple times, of talking to hiring managers, talking to BA team leads, talking to organizations that are both, recipients of the value that ECBA provides, because we talk with candidates as well who are getting the certificate, but they're also working for organizations and contributing. So we wanted to get both sides of the equation of what the ECBA means for the individual in as far as like intrinsic value, like confidence that you've outlined earlier, and the ability to contribute, but also when people hire for ECBAs, what are they getting? What is the skill set that they know that they can ask them of this kind of work and know that they're going to get good quality out of it? So we did a lot of interviews, not just on the candidate side of things, but everybody pretty much. And then at that point, we stepped back and pretty much looked at the full picture. So we took all of the feedback, the research, the interviews, and synthesized it into what seemed to be the perception based off of, the practitioners, the people who are working with them, and people adjacent to them. So even stakeholders that are receiving the value, what business analysis currently looks like at that foundational level. And then we started building. So we created a prototype. It was kind of an outline of like, these are the ideas that are testable. These are the things that we can kind of want people to know. These are the nice to haves. AI kept squeaking into the nice to haves and then started moving up the priority list a bit. So ultimately, we kind of got a decent idea of like what it means to be a successful foundational BAP. But again, we never just go with that as a gut feel. So we launched a global practice analysis study. We built and distributed what is essentially just a pretty complicated survey out to people to get an assessment of what people are actually doing in the world of work. And we don't start from zero and say like, hey, what are you guys doing? So that's what all the preamble and the research is for, is so that we can construct effective questions that align with the expectations of this is what I'm doing, or this is what I'm not doing as often. And then after that, we kind of crunch the numbers. We review it with third-party vendors and make sure that it's not, just us reviewing the numbers in isolation. Like it's always with third-party validators who can kind of keep us honest if there's, not that we're like fudging numbers or anything, but just in case to hold us accountable to make sure that it's truly reflective of what the expectations are going into it. And then we locked that in with independent validation. So we got the final report that came in that was based off of, we took the practice analysis, validated with SME panels. I was in, more meetings than we can count at that point to make sure that, these numbers are good and that we're not just developing things in isolation. And then we started the build. So we did our validated exam blueprints, aligned it to the BACCM in terms of something that we could tie it back to as far as like a resource that can be pulled across all of our IP. As those of you who may or may not know, and if you don't know, you should probably get to studying because it's going to be on there. BACCM is, for all intents and purposes, kind of a reflection of the definition of business analysis. So it is truly ingrained in all of business analysis practices. We validated that because we wanted to make sure that it truly was. And that's kind of how we structured the blueprint around it, and then ended up writing so many items against. So.
Yeah, and I just popped up a banner in case anyone is wondering what you mean by BACCM. It's
Right.
the Business Analysis Core Concept Model.
Sorry, that's a bad habit. I got to start prefacing my acronyms. I'm so ingrained in just like, yeah, sorry.
I gotcha. That's what banners are for. Yeah. We're good. Boy, do I have a lot of questions for you. And actually, you are reminding me of some assistance that I provided during that effort, because another part of my job, which is not just podcasting, it is it's helping to identify and recruit volunteers and to do tracking of those volunteers. So I know that I think I assisted a little bit with helping to identify who would get that practice analysis survey. And I think it's important to note that practice analysis survey is created and managed by that third party that you're talking about. So even though it's something that we send a link out to, that vendor actually is the one that collects the responses and puts the reports together, just to keep things very objective. And beyond that, on the other side of that is there were interviews going on about the results of the practice analysis survey and things. We actually had like a core group of volunteers that were helping us with that. And that core group actually went all the way through and did additional things. And so they gave just under 300 hours of their time. So we really do use folks from the community to help us validate and create what we're talking about here. I wanted to ask you, you brought up the business analysis core concept model. It is not a coincidence that some of our viewers may recognize you from when you were on a couple of weeks ago and talked about the new standard, the new business analysis standard, because you worked with that. I think that is still one of the primary resources for the ECBA. But how did that work that you did on the standard, how did that translate into changes that were being made with the ECBA?
Yeah, I mean, it's totally a fair question. As far as like recognizing me, I mean, I'm not wearing glasses and I shaved this time, so
You eliminated the goatee glasses wig from
yeah,
our
it
last
was
one.
a
Yeah.
tough look. I saw some highlights and I was like, okay, I should probably
Time to
handle that for
shave.
this time. But yeah, as far as like how the standard kind of drives that work, so there was obviously a lot of crossover because it's similar in the way that we do the research, right? Like it's both two versions of trying to determine what effective foundational business analysis looks like. There's the, you know, learning aspect of it and the understanding aspect of it, which is kind of the IP side of things where you can process the information. And then there's the validation component of after I've gone through and processed what business analysis looks like at a foundational level, can I then prove it to myself, to my employer, to everyone through certificates. So obviously the work goes hand in hand, and it wasn't a, full diversion away from, the Babak guide. There are still the stable 30 tasks, as we all know and love, that are critical to understanding business analysis. But we did a lot of research in the standard side of things where we were trying to understand really what understanding business analysis looks like at that meta level, implementing business analysis, and more recently kind of diving more into the mindset of business analysis, the soft skills, the things that don't necessarily neatly roll up into ones and zeros, of like things that are super critical to who you are as a business analysis professional, what kind of business analysis professional you are. Some people lead through communication, some people lead through supporting data, some people lead through, I don't know, just being able to get buy-in for just really great ideas and innovative things that people get excited about. There's no one size fits all or one direction or one purposeful way to do it. So that's kind of where we covered that aspect of it, of what business analysis means more holistically. And I really hate using that word, but it is kind of a good one that captures business analysis at that level. And then the practical aspect, which we really hit home on, of now that you have this understanding, what do you actually do with it? Like, how do you turn it into outcomes? How do you turn it into value? How do you deliver that value to the stakeholders who need it? And that's really where the 30 tasks come in, and a lot of leverage from the Babak guide, because it's a lot more of kind of taking things out of the theory and putting them, real world ready, getting things into practice and being able to do things, not just know things.
Yeah, you mentioned the task, and so obviously when you talk about the task, I know they're mentioned in the standard, but they also play a key role in the Babak guide. I got this question a couple of times as I have talked with folks recently. Will I have to read the Babak guide in order to study for the ECBA, the new ECBA?
Yep. So the Babak guide, the way that we've dispersed the information right now, we had kind of two options, which was write a new book and compile everything together, or leverage the existing resources that we already have. So we're going with that route. Who's to say what the future holds? But currently, as it stands, the exam is comprised of the two primary resources, which is the business analysis standard for kind of the 40% upfront material coverage, and then the 60% more practical BACCM, business analysis core concept model, application side of things, where you go deeper into the tasks to gain that understanding of how to actually apply those tasks. The standard does a great job at outlining the tasks and the purpose of them, and determining them at that understanding level. But to go that layer deeper, all the content is in the Babak guide, and we didn't want to make the standard an extra 100 pages long to cover all the task coverage. So we did a beautiful 40-60 split.
Okay. Um, well, I think there's a lot of resources. You've talked about the different resources, and I know another big part of what's involved in this new ECBA. And by the way, I keep calling it new ECBA, but I don't actually. It's not really new. How do you guys talk about these changes?
I mean, we started with a refresh, but honestly, it turned into more of an evolution. And
Mhm.
like, we didn't just refresh it because we wanted to. Like, we evolved it because we had to. Because the old version no longer really reflected how foundational analysis is practiced in today's workplaces. And I want to be very clear, that is not to take away anything from the accomplishments of the current holders, myself included. What they earned was meaningful in its time, but they didn't just earn a certification, get a job, put their feet up, and call it a day. Like, much in the same way that we hope that all the current ECBA holders out there have been keeping up with the evolving expectations of work, this evolution ensures that the certification itself is always keeping pace too.
Okay. All right. And that was actually going to be another one of my questions. What does that mean for the current ECBA holders? I forgot. You are also an ECBA holder. Yeah.
I sure am.
Yeah.
Working my way through the chain. And to get ahead of this, I don't work on the certifications that I have access to. So I have to get them first before I can change them.
Yes, good point. Yeah, good point. Now but to go back to my original question, you've mentioned a lot of the resources. So we know that the new business analysis standard, that's a free download that folks can get. The BABOK guide is available. If you're a member, you can download a PDF. You can also purchase a hard copy. But there's a bunch of other resources, free resources that are available on our website. And we have updated a lot of those as well. We'll make sure to drop those links into the chat because you guys will probably have lots of other questions around logistics, around how do I study, around probably some sample questions and things like that. And that there is a very comprehensive list of resources that we've developed. I don't know if you want to add anything about those resources.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one thing I will say is they're always changing, right? And not always changing in terms of like, the content itself is changing, but we're always listening to our feedback from our community to try to make sure that the resources that we're offering are always the best that we can to support whatever it is, whether you're, building courses for the ECBA, whether you're taking the ECBA, whether you're, evangelizing it, whatever. Like, we want to be able to support our community as best we can. So we're always open to feedback in terms of, what's working for you, what isn't. Open line of communication, like I said earlier, that always finds its way into the product in some way, shape, or form.
Okay. I know we've talked about the ECBA today from the perspective of somebody that might potentially take it.
Mm-hmm.
What about other kinds of personas, to use our business analysis term? What about leaders? What about, other folks who might interact with either the people taking this exam or whatever?
Yeah, so that's a wonderful question, and one that has definitely driven a lot of the decisions for this, because in certifications and I guess product development as a whole, there's kind of always been maybe a little like tension. I don't know if tension is the right word. It's probably more like something like balance, but is the certification really, from the product perspective, for the candidate who's taking it, or is it for the organization that's bringing them on? And honestly, this, like I said, it's kind of true of product development as a whole. Anyone who's ever tried to deliver on outcomes for different stakeholder groups knows you can't please 100% of everyone. Because if we fully lean into the candidate side, like, we'd be tempted maybe to make a certification that's super easy to get, something that makes you more money than God just by putting it on your resume. And yeah, that sounds great in theory, but if everyone can get it with little to no effort, then it starts to mean not really that much. It becomes kind of like the 2025 version of putting proficient in Microsoft Office under the skills section of your resume. My apologies and condolences to anyone who still has that there. Because for better or worse, work has evolved so much that that's now seen as the baseline, like the expectation, no longer a specialized skill to boast about. And we know we definitely didn't want that route for the ECBA, where it just kind of loses all credibility because of the accessibility or the level of entry is too easy to get or something. And then on the flip side, if we build it solely to meet the ideal expectations of employers or team leads, hiring managers, however you want to refer to the persona group, we risk making something that's kind of completely out of reach for the people it's intended to support. Because of course, organizations want mastery level analysis for an early career paycheck. Who wouldn't? But if we give in to those expectations fully, we alienate the entire demographic that we're trying to help. And that's not just a candidate problem, it's also a workforce risk, because then you leave foundational level professionals in this gray zone where they either get filtered out completely or might end up handing the keys over to AI tools that may or may not be capable of fully automating the first 2 years of every foundational level in your organization. So that's a risk that you might not want to take at this point. So we had to, and will continue to. I feel like a lot of times when we're talking about this, we speak about it in past tense, but it's really an active evolution. So we will continue to strike that balance and make something that still holds weight, but it opens doors for you. Something that says you're ready to contribute, but not that you have to already be flawless. Something that's practical, realistic, and valuable on both sides of the equation for the candidates and for the recipient of value in the organization.
You talked about that that there are some employers that are looking for senior level skills, but looking for those entry level folks to have them, whether that's because of the lower paycheck or whatever. That is a stressor, and one that, when I've talked with different communities, is a real problem on both sides, because the expectations are just not realistic. So this evolution of the ECBA tries to fill that gap a little bit more. So to bring it more in the middle instead of being on the outside.
Yeah, because I mean, the reality is, like, everyone in business across the board is being asked to do more with less. Like in the past, teams would usually kind of scale through just like mass hiring. And now there's like a shift in organizations that are exploring like how to extend their capabilities through things like AI rather than relying on just massive headcount. So professionals entering or even advancing in the field, that's an opportunity to stand out by showing that you can work alongside the latest and greatest tools at your disposal, not be displaced by them necessarily. And that shift in expectations is real, and it's happening. Like, we do see this in employer feedback. Like, there's more CEOs at this point than I can count that are publicly coming out and saying, like, we're leaning into the AI focused things instead of the hiring focused things. And that's not necessarily something to be completely doomer about, but it is something that we do need to address, in that it's a capability that we're going to have. And it's not just in the lens of AI, but also just being able to adapt and approach your situation and your skill set to be malleable to what's around you.
Yeah. Life is coming at us fast, Tyler.
It sure is.
Well, let's see. So I think this has been a really illuminating conversation. I love behind the scenes conversation, because it kind of gives you the goods about why we did things. But I have to ask you, what questions didn't I ask today that you think are going to be really important for folks who might be thinking about taking this exam, who might be inspired to take it? What else is left?
I mean, the biggest one is probably what's next. Like, what does this mean for kind of everything else? And we could talk about that in two ways. As far as like what's next for the profession, everybody doesn't know. We're integrating all of these awesome tools and technologies and elevating our capabilities beyond what we even thought we're capable of, which is super cool. What's next for the structure and the certification program is we'll continue to listen, to refine, to work as quickly as we can to attempt to keep up with the pace of change, because that's ultimately, it's a game of cat and mouse at this point, where the world changes, we respond, the world changes, we respond, and oftentimes we're responding to the change that happened 3 iterations ago. So it's kind of just this delicate balance of ensuring that we're always listening, for sure, and trying to act as quickly as we can without jumping too headfirst into it, because you don't want to invest a bunch of time into getting it wrong, especially on a grand scale. Right. So that's why we are diligent in our process of making sure that it's not just Tyler heard this crazy article, or Jazz heard this podcast, or Susan got information here from somewhere. Let's make a certification about it. As potentially that's something that we could do, but ultimately that's not the ethos of IIBA. We validate our findings. We meet with subject matter experts who are on the ground doing a lot of good work all across the world to determine that the stuff that we're making is reflective of not just what Tyler thinks AI is going to do, or what Jazz thinks AI is going to do, or what, not even AI, just what anybody thinks the direction of business analysis is going to head. We always validate that to ensure that it is reflective of the global community for which we represent.
What I heard you say is that we use business analysis to know where to change, when to change, how to change, if to change. Yeah. So we actually, I hate this metaphor. We eat our own dog food. What is the nicer way to say that? I don't know.
I don't know.
That's what the kids used to say back in the day.
I take care of my dogs. I've had them
dog food's very good these days.
Honestly, yeah, some of the ways that I eat some days, it'd probably be an upgrade. So.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, Tyler, I've got a list of things that I think you're going to come back and talk about at some point. Right here. I've committed you.
Are you signing me up for like a recurring guest segment or something?
I'm trying to recruit you, bud, because you know the inside scoop, and also we want to see what look you'll come back with the next time. That'll keep the audience guessing.
Exactly. Maybe I'll dye my hair like something crazy, or I could shave it all.
That could be a new look. Come back when you see Tyler's name. Come back and see how he has evolved for the next thing we're rolling out. All right.
I caught that.
All right. Well, this has been another fantastic conversation. Thanks so much for sharing. I know we are in the home stretch now of releasing this certification or certificate or exam or whatever the right term is. That starts, people can start taking it on July 21st. So we want to make sure that they get good information and know where to find more info on this. Again, we're going to drop that into the comments so that people have more information. And I want to thank you.
Awesome. Thank you
for joining
us, Susan. It's always a pleasure.
Take care.
You as well.
Yeah. Thanks. All right. Well, that is it for today's session. Oops, I left Tyler on stage. Let's do this again. All right, here we go. Now, Tyler, for real. See ya. Now it's me. All right. Hey, we will be back in 2 weeks. And when we see you again, we are going to shift from talking about certificates and exams, and we are going to be talking about business analysis for healthcare projects. If you work in healthcare and you are doing projects for that, you might want to listen in. And I'm excited because this is literally my neighbor who's going to come and talk about that. So we'll see you 2 weeks from today. Bye.